Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. Today I have with me the Ray and Kerri Wright team. First time I've had two people on the show. Really pleased that they were both able to join me today. Kerri is KB3WAV. Ray is KC3RW. Very, very active with POTA, and I know they just got back from Hamvention, and I want to ask them questions about all of that stuff today. Welcome, Kerri and Ray.
Great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for finding time. So you must have just gotten back from Hamvention, is that right?
We did. We came back later last night. Probably after 8-ish sun last night.
So since that's fresh in your mind, tell me about that. I've never been to Xenia. I've never been to Hamvention. It seems as though a lot of my friends were there. What was that like?
I mean, it's an amazing time. I think, we had gone to Hamvention right after the end of NPOTA, and it was a lot of fun to meet the folks that we had talked to in NPOTA days. But we spent a lot more time out and about looking at new toys to find to continue on with the Parks on the Air type activation. But this time, we spent most of our time at the Parks on the Air booth. We saw, I don't know, we had over probably 500 people go through the booth.
I would think so.
At different times between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the best part about that is just meeting all the people that you've spoken to on the air, and you recognize their voice, but you've never met them in person. So that opportunity is an amazing opportunity to have when you go to Hamvention or Hamcation. It's the same thing.
So how many people total were at Hamvention? Do you have any idea?
They had a number for like the tickets, they had probably 40,000 numbers for like the prize tickets and things like that. So I'm not sure if that is an accurate number, but it was quite a number of people there. And I think it was bigger than it had been in the last couple of years.
And tell me about the Parks on the Air tent or presence. Who coordinated that? Was that you, the two of you?
We mostly coordinated. We work with one of a fellow ham who for Hamvention. He does a lot of ham fests. N3VOP, Mike Fisher. He does have the spaces there, and we basically rented the spaces from him, and then we put up the tent, and we worked with Michael Turner, who is one of the authorized vendors, and he brought a supply of stuff. And we also worked with JSE. They donated some hats and shirts for donations, so people could give a donation to POTA and get a hat or a shirt. So, but we basically coordinated it, and we had KB3CMT and KB3KLT, Curtis and Kerri Turner, who also spent a lot of time in the booth and helped setting up and tearing down.
Nice. And I think Jason Johnson was there also, correct?
He did make it there this year. And we had Rick Parent was also stopped in a few times. So we had some of the leadership, and Tom Martin came down from Michigan to spend some time at the booth and, of course, do some shopping for whatever other ham radio gear we might need to do Parks on the Air.
That was the first time that we had all three of those gentlemen in the booth at the same time. So that was kind of nice.
So any time for activating while you were there? Or was that just not in the cards?
She always makes time.
We stayed at Caesars Creek State Park, so we're camping out. So we got to activate that park, of course, and we could activate it 2 mirrors because there are enough other Parks in the Air folks in the park itself that we could get on the air. And in fact, I think we did a 6-meter activation as well. So some people who are looking at the 6-pack award were able to add Caesars Creek as a completed park there. And of course, after we closed up the booth for the night, we had to find a park or 2 or 3 or 4.
So let's work backwards. I'm very interested to hear how the two of you got started in Parks on the Air. You mentioned NPOTA, so I presume that was the beginning. But tell me, how does that look?
So Ray likes to tell this story.
I love to tell this story. So previous to 2016, Kerri did have her license, but was not an enthusiast of HF transmissions or code transmissions. She didn't like all the static. She didn't like the Morse code, and would often complain that, maybe I could wait and do that after she went to bed or something like that. So when 2016 got here and the first federal holiday in January, I said, hey, why don't we try this National Parks on the Air stuff? And it was really kind of funny because it was brand new, and it was ARL and the National Park Service were doing this joint venture together. We decided to go up and do the Antietam battlefield. And when we got there, they really didn't know what to do with us. So the law enforcement rangers came down and got us and said, well, we're going to take you to a part of the battlefield that no one ever gets to go to. So you guys can do this, and we won't, it won't be an obstruction and whatever. So it was funny that while Kerri was transmitting from the truck with an HF radio, the young officer was beside me, and he said, who's she talking to? I said, Puerto Rico, I think New York. Now she's talking to South Carolina, and he was
In Italy.
He says, I can't even talk to the other side of the battlefield. How is this possible? So it was kind of fun. And they soon figured out what we were doing and pretty much gave us free reign to be anywhere where the public normally can be at. And so that was fun. The problem being, Kevin, is that all of us throughout that year got so hooked on doing the activations and doing the parks and being out and seeing fellow hams that that cold cutoff on December 31st just wasn't right for many of us. Sorry, we have a cat over here that really wants to be part of the program.
I understand. If my dogs were in the room, they'd be doing the same thing.
So, I mean, that's basically, we started with that, and it just was a lot of fun. We went out. I mean, I only ended up activating about 5 months of that year because work commitments took me out of the country for a lot of it. So, but as we closed up in November, December for POTA, it was like I was out every day, and I was doing multiple parks, and they kind of were trying to get a number of parks activated. They were trying to increase it so we could get to the, I think, 10,000 parks activated and over a million QSOs. So those of us who were fairly active at that time were out there every day and basically trying to do as much as we could to get to those numbers. And on December 31st, it was like, oh, we're done. And that was really because we had so much fun, and it really energized. I mean, like he said, I was not a huge fan of listening to all the static, and certainly not a huge fan of Morse code. But it was like, oh, what can I do now? Because I was having so much fun with it. I had really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. It was a great way to increase my skill set in ham radio. We were using the Eagle One. It was attached to a hand cart with a marine battery and a 897. That was our first setup.
Mm-hmm.
So because some of them we had to be portable, so we rolled it down to some of the portable activations on the hand cart, and that's what we activated it. By the end, we were using the 7300, and we had a couple different types of antennas. We still use the Eagle One, but we had some other portable ones where we needed to go portable. And then we'd move to the Biennial batteries because of the lightweight. So we weren't carrying around the marine battery any longer, which was nice.
Let me draw this picture then. So you're activating all these parks, both of you, you're doing it together. Then January 1st comes along. There's no more program. You're already hooked. What were those next steps? Like, who were you talking to? Who were you involved with? Where this idea of continuing it into Parks on the Air took hold? So
we had heard toward the end there, we had heard something about this Worldwide Flora Fauna KF and the KFF version of it, which was an ongoing program that had started in Europe. And it basically was something that we could kind of roll over. They ended up taking all the parks from the POTA, most of the parks, not all of them, but most of the parks were rolled into that program. And then we could just continue going. And they started adding additional parks like the state parks and things like that. So that added to what we could activate. And, the hunting part, right after the end of 2016, it went back to being really slow. And when we started off in 2016, it was really hard to get your 10 contacts. When we went to 2017, it was really hard to get your 10 contacts again. And the KFF program actually needs 44 to make a full activation. But the US version of it was looking at it, trying to make it the 10 contacts because, it is just more difficult here to get the 44. When you're in Europe, you're a lot closer, not spread out. And they have a fairly active ham group that was already engaged in doing the park stuff. So we just kind of rolled into that very slowly. And at that point is when I was really having a hard time getting 10 contacts to make an activation. And that's when I decided I was going to figure out this Morse code stuff. He already knew it. I did not. I could listen and, hear some things, and I could recognize my call sign, but that's about it. So I just I reached out to a couple of folks who had learned it over at POTA and asked for help. N2CX is now a silent key, but he was a huge influence on learning CW for me and gave me some hints on what to do. And Ray helped me because he had that training as well. But I just I was looking at other options to be able to do contacts when the bands weren't great. You couldn't get the contacts in voice. I was having an issue with getting digital working. Well, I said, let's go back to Morse code. And I think the first few times, or actually probably the first month I was out, I had my cheat sheet, my the letters in case I forgot them. I had call signs that I would recognize that were usually CW hunters. So I could also recognize those. And I started doing activations in CW with my cheat sheets. Not probably the ideal way to do it, but everybody was really gracious and let me struggle away and still made the contact. So
she had a core group of hunters that would be very patient and understanding and would send, they would send their calls repeatedly over and over and over until she got the exchange. And then after a while, I was trained by the military, which was one letter, one sound. She started to put the sounds together for the whole word, for the whole call sign. So she knew, oh, wait a minute, this call sign, because she listened to all the characters strung together, is this.
And you had, like you said, once you had familiarity with, the people that were calling over and over again, I got to learn their call signs so I could hear them. Even if I didn't, I couldn't always recognize other call signs, but those who are regulars, I didn't have any problem hearing. So I just kept playing with Morse code. That was a learning experience, but I still do it now. It's not my favorite. It's takes a lot more, especially if I go after work, my brain's already fried. To have to do Morse code, it's like, oh no, I can't do this. But I'll still do it every once in a while, and not as much as I probably should to keep learning and get more familiar, but I'll pull it out of the weeds every once in a while.
So it sounds like you didn't miss a beat, though, the two of you. You started with POTA, moved on to KFF, and then transitioned over to POTA, maybe both. Do you do both POTA and KFF now?
Yep, still do both.
I've got to point out, Kerri, when I took a quick look at the rankings, you activate a lot. I mean, you I think were maybe second on the all-time activation list last year, and maybe fifth or sixth so far this year. Ray, I'm sure you're on the list too. I just didn't see where your call sign was. but you must be out nearly every day.
So I did do the Bailey Sprock for last year, so I was out every day. I do try to go out most days. Some days work doesn't allow it, and other family commitments. But yeah, like today, I did not go out for an activation. I was itching to, but I didn't. So
I requested her home. and the Bailey Sprocket was?
the contest for work doing 365 for a year, both activator and hunter. So I did the activation side of it and was out every day last year, even in ice storms and snowstorms and thunderstorms, and it was a challenge. And any of the others that did it will tell you the same thing, that it was really not an easy task.
Well, congratulations. I did interview WC1N Bob Frequasian, who was one of those gentlemen, and also recently interviewed Clint Sprott, the guy it was named after, W9AV, who accidentally almost, I mean, he didn't realize that he had been hunting every single day for the year, and somebody at POTA had noticed that and named the award after him. So, but anyway, congratulations. That's an amazing feat.
Oh, I didn't know how it was named, so that's an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, the other gentleman was Ken Bailey, and I don't know what his backstory was, but yeah, Clint Sprott. If you have time, take a listen to his interview. Really fascinating guy.
Okay, I will do that.
So tell me, what else do you do within the two of you within POTA other than activate? You're obviously very well known. You're very active. Do you go to meetups? What other interactions do you have with some of these hams that are activating parks?
So we do meetups. We've been to Pennsylvania. Ray organized a Delaware in a day event a couple of years ago, where we had, I guess, about 15 or 16 activators come out to Delaware, and in one day we activated all the parks so that the hunters could
get worked all Delaware.
Yeah, get worked all Delaware. They had the opportunity to, anyhow, because every park was activated on that day in Delaware by different activators.
Did the two of you get involved with the VE3 JLN effort recently? James Linden?
No, we had already had something else planned for that weekend, but we definitely, I chased him down a few times and made contacts, but we were not over in Delaware. We are going to participate in the Rhode Island event coming up in September, where they're going to activate all of Rhode Island in a few days in September. So we're going to go up there and camp for a few days and activate as many Rhode Island parks as we can.
So how do I convince you to come up to Maine and help us activate all of Maine? Is that in the cards for you?
I'm not opposed to that. We have activated in Maine. We were Acadia National Park in 2016. So we did that park. That's the only time we've been up there. But we will be back at some point to get some more Maine parks.
I would love to activate all of Maine. It's just somewhat of a challenge geographically. It's there's a lot of miles between where I am now and the furthest away park in northern Maine. So it'll take me a while to do it.
I think I worked all of Maryland before they added some of the additional islands. So we had done Hart Miller Island and Susquehanna National Wildlife Refuge. Those were the only two islands that were part of the initial batch of Maryland parks. So I had worked all Maryland then, but in the last batch of parks they added, I believe, 6 more islands. So we have 3 more yet to get on that, trying to get Ray his worked all of Maryland. But it is a challenge, especially when they put the islands out there.
We did get a boat out of it.
And we really enjoyed the Hamcation and Hamvention, and we'll also be down at Huntsville Hamfest as well in August. So we'll help out with the booth down there.
So tell me about the Parks on the Air Plaque event. Do you intend to participate with that?
I did participate a little bit on the first year of it. At that point, it happened to fall on usually about the same weekend that our granddaughter's birthday is. So that made it a little more difficult. We did 1 year. The second year we did I did the whole weekend and was able to get both the QSO plaque and the Rover plaque at that point. But after that, we've been kind of, again, back to the weekend that it usually fell on was related to a family event. So I think now they've moved it to June. We might have a little more options there. There's no birthdays, no family birthdays around it right now. So that will help out for our perspective anyhow.
So you think you will be out there then on June 3rd and 4th?
I think I will probably be out there. Haven't decided exactly, what level of participation, because part of what we've also been asked to do is we've been invited up to another Hamfest to do promotion for Parks on the Air that same weekend. So maybe we'll go up there and do the promotion, but also do in Pennsylvania. So that's a possibility.
So let's go further back before POTA, before NPOTA. How did you guys get involved with ham radio to begin with? Ray, it sounds like you may have had a military background and learned at least CW then. Did that lead you to ham radio? What was the story?
I said to myself that I would never, ever, ever want to listen to Morse code in the 80s. And a friend of mine, I guess it was in 2010, said, hey, they got rid of the code requirement. You can get your license now. And I'm like, okay. So it started off as a desire to support Aries and Racy's sort of commitments, public service, events and such like that, VHF, UHF. And we got involved in that first. But my childhood background had been watching my grandparents that were their generation, World War II. Shortwave was just a form of, entertainment. So they had an old shortwave radio and they would fire it up every now and then. And they would, why don't you listen to this? Listen to this. This is from Europe. And I just thought that was just really cool that you could sit in your house and hear, BBC and stuff like that, stuff going on all around the world. So it always entertained me. But it wasn't until the early, 2010, 2011 time period that I decided to go ahead and get my ticket. And then once I got my ticket, Kerri was like, well, I should get mine too so I could support. And we did have a lot of fun public service events that we do that to this day still keep us entertained. There's one called Hike Across to Maryland where they literally have to hike the AT trail in one day, 42 miles from the top of Maryland to West Virginia. And it is a treacherous 42 miles. It is up and down. There is no flatness, and and these folks do it. They have to maintain a 3 mile on average. And, sometimes we have to pull some of them because they're just not making the time hacks. And then another event that we do is a horse race. And that's a lot of fun to watch the horses and riders and coming through and going through the checkpoints and stuff. So,
and we also were looking for a hobby that we could do together when, as we got older, where we weren't going to be as active in some of the things that we had been doing before that. So it was something that we could do together. I mean, I have a technical background, so the testing was not an issue to get licensed. And now it's the funny part is during COVID, we actually encouraged our two of our son-in-laws have their license now. They both are participating in ham radio. One has actually done some chasing or hunting right now. And our youngest daughter also has her license. So that's kind of fun to see it kind of spread out to the family. And our grandkids like to listen. They're fascinated by the Morse code.
yeah.
So that's kind of fun. And he likes that because he at some point would like to hear them or have them do the CW and just get on the radio again once they figure it out what they want to do. But
So I guess with all this conversation about how we grow the hobby, we should just pay attention to what Ray and Kerri are doing. Teach your kids, teach the grandkids.
Well, and that's, I think, one of the best things we've seen about Parks on the Air is it has really become a family event. We have a lot of couples out there activating together and hunting together, and we have a lot of families where the kids are actually getting involved now, and I think that's a huge benefit to ham radio itself. You can't ask for a better advertisement than when you see a family out there doing a park together.
Where do the two of you see Parks in the Air going in the next 3 to 5 years? Obviously they've had phenomenal growth, almost incomprehensible growth. Where do you think it ends up in 3 to 5 years?
I always like to tease that the FCC is going to give us our own band.
Okay, that's first I've heard that. That's good.
I don't see it slowing down.
No.
I think the administrators are trying to keep it interesting enough, and they throw in little things each year to try to keep up the level of excitement. I think the level of excitement is just naturally there because of all the young people that are coming into the program, and even a return of all of the operators that used to work and were on the radio and said they had completely stopped. They weren't participating in the hobby anymore, and this has brought them back, and they just enjoy it and enjoy the camaraderie and everything like that. It going to Hamvention and Hamcation for me is almost like going to a family reunion. It's that sort of a feeling, right? With people that you talk with, and you just, once you meet them, then you want to see them again, right? And you do have a shared interest of Parks on the Air and everything like that, but you also have that relationship that you've developed with them, over the years, that you just want to see how they're doing, how their family's doing, how the grandkids are doing, those kind of.
Probably heard people say that all of a sudden we don't hear a call sign on the air very often, and that you used to hear every day, and people say, hey, what happened? Or, somebody will call and check on them and things like that. It's just because it really is kind of a family type atmosphere where everybody is kind of looking out for one another. Ray likes to comment that at some point, when I've been out, and despite what people think, there are places around Maryland and Pennsylvania where you don't have cell service. So he'd get off work and, oh, where's Kerri? Don't know. Tried to call me. I'm not getting any calls in. So he would either call up or text one of the guys that are VE3ZN or Kilo Alpha 8 Hotel. We're regular followers, and he would call him up and say, hey, have you seen Kerri? Where's she at? Because I didn't always tell him where I was going. Maybe. But out doing parks someplace. And I had one time I actually broke down, and I'm sitting on the top of a mountain waiting for AAA to come tow the vehicle away. And I did put up the radio, the antenna was on the radio. So I was talking to folks, and I didn't have great cell service, but they were able to let Ray know that, I was okay and everything. And, it was just the way that, one guy said, well, I'm not too far away. I can come, help you out. And I said, no, I think, but the offer was there, and, it was just, it really is a good family atmosphere for the most part.
Yeah, I concur with everything you guys are saying. I mean, first of all, the community is just amazing, and it is fun to get on the air and hear consistently certain call signs. But also I've heard the story so many times about hams that either let their license lapse, or they just maybe didn't let it lapse, but they weren't on the radio for years, and then rediscovered ham radio through Parks on the Air. And I think it's all part of the community, certainly, but it's also the challenge of operating portably and problem solving. It seems as though every time you set up, something needs to be fixed or something's not working quite right, and there's some fun in problem solving that also. So absolutely. I really appreciate you guys taking some time for me today. I know you've just got back from Hamvention, as we talked about. You're probably exhausted, but I can tell you, you're both inspirations to people like myself that are just now getting back into the hobby after years away. And I appreciate all that you're doing for Parks in the Air. Thank you.
Well, thank
Well,
you.
thank you for having us. No, it's just a wonderful organization. I somebody asked me, so what is the difference between you two? I said, it's still a hobby for me. It's an obsession for her. But
Well, and that's everybody goes, well, you must be retired. I said, well, no, I still work a full-time job, and sometimes, you know, it's not a 40-hour week, but I'll find time. And we like to say this is a target-rich environment in our area. There are a lot of parks around, so I can usually hit a park on my way home if I can't get too far out. But to get to unique ones at this point, I have to go
300 miles.
couple hours at least to get to a unique park. I'm still chasing Bob Voss, M4CD. He's the leader in unique parks, and I keep trying to inch up to catch him. I picked up a few more unique parks while we were in Ohio, so I'll keep trying. But he probably picked up a few more as he headed back from Hamvention as well. So
The funny part to watch the very competitive members of POTA is that for most people it's a straight line from point A to point B, but for a POTA operator it's not always a straight line. It's wherever that unique park that can get you is.
I've been talking to Ray and Kerri Wright, KB3WAV and KC3RW. I can assure you, you'll find them on the POTA spotting page. Hopefully they'll be out during the Plaque event. I'll be looking for you. I'll be at Acadia, K0001, operating all weekend long, so I'll be looking for you both in the air. Thank you again.